I'm going to continue with the reading from yesterday from Transylvanian Sunrise. Again, this is a passage lifted from the novel in which the hero of the novel, really, Cesar Brad, who is a very high ranking officer in Department Zero of the Romanian intelligence services, has a confrontation with a representative, a very high ranking member of the Propaganda 2 P2 Freemason Lodge, who comes to Romania to gain special access and special privileges around a discovery, as we find out, a rather remarkable discovery in Mount Bucegi. So he has to gain the trust and the cooperation of Cesar Brad, the hero of the story. And the reason that I'm reading this in relation to Saint-Germain is that Saint-Germain is known as being kind of a master mason, the ultimate mason. And he is a figure, as far as I can tell, who is very pro-human, an instigator, a violet flame of freedom, standing for human dignity and progress. And yet we see so much in history that would seem to show that the Freemasons stand opposed to freedom and human progress. So I began to think about it, kind of a double movement in which perhaps let's call them, just provisionally, let's say, establishment Freemasonry, seeking to limit, to dumb down, to control, to depopulate the human race. And then another school or element within Freemasonry that gives us the keys to uplift, to upgrade, to see more clearly into the workings of the universe in order to attain liberation and freedom. So this passage from the book seems to elucidate, for our modern era, the book was written in 2003, the dynamics of this interchange, of this coexistence of good and evil. And I'm going to then bring it back to Saint-Germain, because we're dealing with a kind of meta-history. We're dealing as a race at a point in our human history that I don't think we've ever encountered before. We have a chance to ascend ourselves, to upgrade, to rise above, to know ourselves in a new way. And we have to then have a kind of a fundamental flipping of our constructed social reality in order to bring in something new. And my feeling was the spirit of Saint-Germain. I feel this spirit and would like to, or perhaps I'm not sure who's, in a sense I was going to say to use the spirit of Saint-Germain, but I'm feeling almost like the spirit of Saint-Germain has entered into my project, which was and is the recreation, the reformation, the reformatting, the new understanding of international law, what law is, and then taking it above to natural law and then universal law, an understanding of the universe that gives us freedom and an amplified, broadened, creative options for ourselves, and that the nature of law is fundamentally creative, and should promote freedom and enable freedom and encourage freedom. So there's a lot to look at in order to make this case and to begin in earnest the work of putting something like this together. A tribunal, an academy, training center, a new vision of what law is, given the momentous times that we are facing. And I would say never before in history have we been here, as far as I know. So going back a couple of millennia, that's as much as I can claim to know anything about. So the video yesterday went a little bit long, so I decided to cut it off and resume. So I encourage people to go back and listen to the first part, because I don't want to waste a lot of time giving a lot of background. Signore Massini is explaining the methods by which his organization is able to control society so expertly and thoroughly, and how to bring down the vibrational energy of individuals and societies in order to make them more amenable, more pliable, more subservient to this control. So it's quite depressing. Let's go back. He's talking about how people who speak out can be nullified by the publishing of negative, false calumny against that person in the press and in public discourse, and that once slandered and smeared, the person has a very difficult time getting back up again, because the clamoring public that has a very short memory cannot even take in their subsequent denials and refutations. They're stuck with the negative image that the people behind the curtain are able to throw out there to destroy the person who is speaking out. So he says, Signore Massini is saying, we must exploit as much as possible the vicious tendency of modern society, represented by its sick thirst for sensational headlines exhibiting evil situations or characters. We are well aware of both the influence and the terrible impact of such suggestions on the emotional nature of humans. We do know that evil suggestions destroy the harmonious energy structures of the aura and bring about a subtle form of stress at psychical level. We also know that they lower the frequency of positive perceptions and affect the beneficial intentions of humans. These perfectly serve our intentions as they exhaust people, diffuse their attention, weaken their alert mind, and blur the farsightedness of their spirit. Thus we achieve the very goal we consistently aimed at, increasing the social entropy. I even dare to say that it is us who have raised this skill close to perfection. To achieve the social entropy, that is the close-knit nature of our society, naturally that should be there. We should be close to one another, and our bonds should be perdurable and living and vibrant and healthy and strong. But it's difficult to control a society with close bonds within itself among its members. So the idea is to create entropy, to weaken those bonds, to make the entire population more controllable. To achieve the social entropy, which triggers a rather total social confusion that we're seeing, total social confusion we're seeing in the United States right now and in Western Europe. in the more brainwashed countries. We always put to use conflicting items of information on the same issue that is disseminated by various media, seasoning the issue with awful or lugubrious connotations. We therefore subsidize and promote works centered around childish or fanciful subjects. They all have a great appeal, though, to the narrow-minded looking for the sensational. It is us who premiered this mechanism and fueled the proliferation of such books aiming at the public's acceptance. And they actually ended by appreciating these works. The economical and social system we have imposed strongly encourages rivalry. I just had to answer the door. The economical and social system we have imposed strongly encourages rivalry in its dissonant forms, unlawful competition and overconsumption of products. Rivalry in its dissonant forms, rather than that would be the opposite of cooperation. It would be rivalry, not to bring out the best in people, but to diffuse people, to pit people against one another. For all of these, we offer a humanitarian justification, which is training and motivating people to cross the life jungle that poses a death threat on them. In fact, this senseless disquiet and obsession of the people, which permanently keeps them busy and under constant pressure, leads to a significant decline of genuine moral and ethical values and to a vicious growth of human nature. It is, I guess, an expansion of our lower impulses and our uglier proclivities. I remember being in New York when I was quite young, and I said, my God, you know, they train us to anticipate that life's a jungle, you got to get out. It's you against the world, and you got to fight, and it's dog eat dog. And I remember distinctly one day thinking, is that normal? Is it natural? Is it necessary? Is there some reason why society is this way? Wouldn't it be better if we cooperated? And what is the mechanism? There was some dark hand that I sensed in this reality that did not seem natural to me. It did not seem that this is just the way life is. So getting to this part when I was reading this book really resonated with me. We do take full advantage of these ideas and opportunities at each and every media level. Given the strong support, we have also encouraged the proliferation of anomalous forms of sexuality and pornography that eventually reached unbelievable levels. We did this as a result of our observations that both man's strength and virility and woman's sensibility and intuition quickly diminish when subjected to evil practices. Under such circumstances, human nature becomes unstable and totally vulnerable to temptations. Hence, the basic idea can be easily manipulated. To achieve our goals, the target's resistance must be weak. We therefore launch attractive ideas and opportunities to people and then take advantage of their weakness or provisions in the contracts they recklessly signed with us. Modern society is a perfect fit to this design. Given the huge technological progress we have allowed, we offer more and more temptations, and the people easily fall victims to indiscriminate and various sense gratifications and stimuli. We're perfectly aware their willpower will soon be exhausted, and without resoluteness, humans are like stupid animals on their way to the slaughterhouse. We place a special emphasis on the young people because the seeds of life can be easily killed in the feeble. Under an appealing and attractive mask, we infuse the young generation with all the elements meant to fuel and swell vicious tendencies. We encourage broadcasting of movies displaying violence and horror movies where the characters exhibit sadistic and evil features. To do this, we rely on advertising, which, in my opinion, turned into the very heart of commerce. Thus, We enormously multiplied people's tendency toward consumption, which has taken the form of a modern disease. Although they don't need something specific, they follow the tendency to buy, consume, and buy again even useless items and make superfluous provisions. On the other hand, there is a close relationship between the temptation of money and the means by which one gets it. It is not easy to become rich. And in the present economical and legal environment we have imposed, it is even impossible if one resorts to honest methods. That is why almost the entire group of rich people is vicious and perverted. The dishonest and twisted nature of the rich make them keep secret their actions, and this triggers mutual obligations, particularly by blackmail. We are very skillful in taking the greatest advantage of such situations, as we are the very architects of this method. However, wondered Cesar, I think not all people react this way. If so, what do you do in this situation, Signore Massini? The venerable one indifferently raised his shoulders. There are too few left. It is not worth paying them attention. Take Romania, for example. It was very easy to place our people in key positions because we skillfully took profit by the transition from a totalitarian regime, which had also been set up by us, to an apparent state of freedom. We correctly foresaw the greedy and unscrupulous behavior of people exposed to various fears and hardships. Such people are like thirsty wanderers in the middle of the Sahara who desperately drink at the oasis without caring at all about their nakedness nor the opinion of other people. After the revolution in your country, we did nothing else but to encourage the economical disaster, particularly corruption, and the Romanian people's temptation for the taste of money. After such a long period of various hardships and restrictions, and subject to long-lasting suffering, it was highly probable that Romanians would easily fall victims to the surge of temptations. Indeed, with rare exceptions, they all fell in this trap. At that moment, we interfered at the political level. You should not worry, as this is what we do in almost all countries. We must be certain that the main positions in the government and the parliament are held by old people, many of them spineless and easy subjects to manipulate. To the strong and dynamic characters, on the other hand, we took great care to develop their selfishness, especially the deceiving feeling of power, which in their case was not the sign of real leaders. Acting in this way, we fueled their egotistic, petty, and hypocritical nature. We needed such people in key positions because of their appetite for both dirty businesses and the paltriness to do anything to keep their prerogatives and jobs. We have almost completely succeeded. As a matter of fact, it was quite easy given the thirst for money and greediness of your politicians, all accompanied by their cowardice and deceitfulness. All of these features make them a bunch of abject characters. We feel very comfortable with this situation, but now I think we should make no further discussion of that. Cesar hastily availed himself of this short break and asked, "What is all this for, Signore Massini? What is exactly the final purpose of the Masons? Of all you have told me so far, nothing seems to be left to achieve, yet you seem to perseveringly aim to something." My dear friend, the answer is quite easy. When is the king the absolute ruler of his kingdom and his people? It is when he has the absolute power. It is the cornerstone for us. Soon, the power of domination over the entire world must be in the grasp of our hands. Bluntly speaking, the thirst for power is the basic motivation for all people who accept to join us. politicians, leaders, and businessmen. Above all, there are the elite made up of our venerable Illuminati, whose design it is to take full control over both the entire world and each and every individual. There are so many means to achieve this plan that it would take me too long to describe them to you. I would, however, offer you a few explanations. It will be in your power to understand the rest and to quickly learn them along with your integration into the rules and ideology of our organization. We will only attain complete influence and control upon humans when we succeed to supervise everything. The collected forces and powers of the members belonging to all of our organizations will gradually lead to such totalitarianism when the individual freedom and autonomy is supervised from the point where a human being is born. To make sure of this, and to experience the validity of the result we invented as a mere experiment, communism. However, we noticed that the constant drawbacks and people's anguish, and also the cult of personality that would always go for the heads of all communist countries, created some tensions and could even enable some clearness upon reality for some individuals who might have caused trouble in time. The communist system was only appropriate for a certain period of time during several decades. It became inefficient later and even dangerous for our interests. When we understood this, we decided to finish this experience and we gave the green light for the political changes. We must create the illusion of something different. But we already knew that nothing could be changed in one day. So we were expecting lots of social rebellions meant to change mentalities, goals, and the way of thinking. We are those who insidiously penetrated the main ideas of the new social system by means of media, politicians, and by constantly creating new rifts in finances, particularly meant to strain the relation between people and government. Welfare shouldn't be a general condition, but we want a certain stratum of corrupted people who are therefore going to support our interests without having the smallest clue about it. On the contrary, the appearances always make them believe that it's up to them to act and make decisions, and they are having the power which we must support for them in order not to let the spell go down. What I'm telling you now is top secret in Masonry. You shouldn't think that every member knows our mysteries. Access to our ideas and goals is only allowed step by step, and the information to be revealed is also structured in sequence of stages according to its importance. As a general rule, we always act at 3 different levels, which clearly outline the duties and value of the Masonic Brother. Although in a bird's eye view, these levels seem like independent, superimposed strata, they still comprise some linking rings that make crucial importance in understanding what our plans worldwide are. But these linking rings are only known by our leaders, our elder Illuminati. The first rank includes those who have newly joined our Mason lodges, who are not yet important enough for us to entrust serious tasks to them. They are our daily workers, i.e., those who accomplish lots of petty work, which is quite useful, yet as a whole they prepare the stage for our great blows. By that I mean the appearance of different military conflicts, revolutions, and national payback incapacity, which is some of our heavy artillery and part of the strategy that our remarkable fellows envisage. But such far-reaching actions only come up after the material is ready. This is after our daily workers act for a while, all under our guidance in the shade without precisely knowing the real target. People belonging to this rank are particularly the newly rich and quite narrow-minded, pursuing titles, ranks, and social acknowledgement. As a whole, they are snobbish, bearing an inferiority complex which they seek to balance by thinking that they belong to the high life or even make up this social stratum. They're supposed to be full of vanity, hypocrisies, and selfishness, having some financial power but not wealthy enough not to yearn in secret after a royal life. Even so, it is absolutely necessary that they must be some of our political leaders, as we need to control the levers and influence both at the governmental level and at the lower local level, as this is where the intrigue starts its way to the center. And this is why we mainly try to attract to this rank professors, lawyers, doctors, inspectors, mayors, and certain businessmen in the area. For all these people, we have created some valves or motivation to lure them and then use them to our benefit. There are some selected clubs, such as Rotary or Lions, which give them the illusion that they belong to the high life in the country and therefore are leading society. In fact, these clubs are but some dust in their eyes, a shield against possible attacks. For the people who belong there will people who belong there will undauntedly fight to preserve the privileges that they attained as members of the so-called high life. They are attracted and and stimulated by a serious and selected front side of that elitist organization where only good people are known to penetrate, people who represent the cream of society and retain power and influence in different state structures. This is a highly attractive image that we maintain by luxury and by enabling high-ranking relationships and financial support. But I stress it again, all these things create obligations. Our main interest is to generate great differences between the social strata. This means people who are quite rich or very poor with no intermediary and supportive layer in between. This is how we maintain a general social condition that makes people believe they must face a continual assault and ceaselessly fight to earn their living day by day or to increase their possessions even more. This tension and anxiety will supply the fear element. As long as fear is there, there is no room for peace, consolation, relaxation, or spirituality. This is why we want to obstruct any path to good, harmony, genuine religious belief, which would damage our power and control. What do you mean, Cesar asked in a vexed tone, that you do not have any religion at all, and on the contrary, you want to undermine it? Religion? Consider carefully what is going on in the world these days. Think of the race hatred, the deviated sects that get fanatic in the name of a unique but particular God, the endless conflicts between nations that are mostly grounded on religious divergences. Think of the corruption and cowardice of the Christian Church, the Orthodox vanity and the Catholic manipulation. Indeed, it's still us who have directed these things backstage, particularly by the perverse intrigues and ideas implemented at the right moment in some key points under the power of some people. In exchange, we give people the kingdom of the universal architect who can really take good care of them. You call him the Prince of Darkness. It makes no importance. First of all, you must persistently follow up your own interest in everything you do. This will require great efforts and commitment, quite serious sometimes. For instance, this may include denying your religion and even giving away your soul, but you will taste the power, the wealth, and the extraordinary influence at the high levels of society. That's interesting, said Cesar with a subtle and ironic attitude, all according to his initial plan. I used to have some different concepts. However, what you're saying here seems quite attractive. Don't think that these facts are known by everybody, said the Venerable Mazzini with enthusiasm. Far be it. I told you about 3 basic levels and their scaled importance in our Masonic organization. Now, you understand that the first rank of the daily workers has no access to such information that concerns the secret aspects of Masonry, particularly our worldwide plans. The members of the second rank, however, can meet some of our international arrangements so that if they should get deeper into the political and governmental agreements, they are given much more support by our powerful lodges. In particular, we set up for them a specific a specific hierarchy of steps or ranks up to the 33rd degree. It's important to notice how people can stick to their titles, their posts, and acknowledgement. And we consider this highly within our organization. A 33-degree Mason can stand for a basic figure in our general structure. In time, we tried to spread the idea that this is the peak of the Masonic pyramid. Still, I want to mention to you in particular that the second rank is but the beginning of the Masonic world elite. This is carefully concealed. Nevertheless, some rumors have escaped from time to time. You have to know, however, that it is us at the peak of the pyramid, and we cannot be sued in the court. There is no other state structure above us for the simple reason that we have created almost all of them. This means you own the power at the highest level, Cesar interrupted pensively. How is it possible that the third rank of Masons, to whom you referred to as the world Masonic elite, can own such power without being known? We have no need, we need no acknowledgement the way you're thinking about it. We may show up in society, particularly by means of the inherited titles of nobility, or as great bankers dealing with their business. We can always take care to stay close to the so-called charity organizations by means of some foundations that also belong to us. In fact, these foundations enable us to transfer large amounts of money under the color of legality and philanthropic goals. We are the ones who retain, in fact, the world financial monopoly, for we control all the money markets. The World Control Project is meticulously set up. How did you manage to control the world of finances? Cesar asked. Nobody can have access to all the money in circulation. We mostly control this money, but our real influence consists of the huge debts we basically force upon all governments in order to deal with the economy, and therefore in the social field in the way that we like it. This is basically the main target for which we founded 2 high financial structures in the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. But the strongest stroke which made our greatest success was getting the USA into debt so that they completely fall under the financial politics we arrange. Just as I said, the essence in such politics is the interest on loans and the subsequent debts and all the forms of obligations or concessions to result in our favor. This is how we control the economic world, and we direct it where we please. We can create real instability or obstruct the payments where we have particular interest. Countries in bankruptcy is what we are best at, for we can thereby indirectly rule a whole people. We obviously fix and connect these strategies in advance by misinformation through the international media, which also belongs to us. This system proved highly efficient in time, and we properly manage it. In case there is somebody to oppose it, There would normally be no problem to do away with him as a political or social personality thanks to our countless relationships to corruption and to our control over the financial system. There are some special cases, such as the USA, where we cannot allow any mistakes or exterior actions except the ones we provide. This is why every president of the United States is our choice and the outcome of our Masonic goals. He must absolutely be an outstanding member in our Masonic lodges. Most of the time they belong to the second rank. In order to perfectly hide the political and financial maneuvers we display, we demanded the most spectacular and also hilarious idea that we managed to implement to the crowds in the last 200 years. This probably is one of our most valuable additions that provided great advantage to us and can still be quite efficient these days. You may be surprised, but it sounds familiar. Democracy. The concept itself is not worth a brass. Still, it is the most essential piece in the gear of our plans and is quite popular. The main reason is that it stirs vanity to people and makes them crave for power. In fact, it only generates some sort of hatred, fight, and temptation, which makes great frame for manipulation. The secret political games and the high financial and power interests are apparently in the hands of the electors. You have to proceed to slight compromises in order to enjoy all the advantages later on. What is the advantage we actually draw by means of democracy? It usually leads to disunion between different social layers of a country and to downright conflicts between peoples in the world. The idea we promote in order to actually conceal our plans and actions under everybody's silent agreement concerns the illusions of the free choice for every individual. But when we deal with tens and hundreds, millions of different people so stressed and perverted, their so-called free choice can be easily directed by different methods. The tempest must go wild, but its main direction can be influenced so that it may protect certain areas and destroy others. We found the easiest and safest way to attain chaos and disunion. You see, despite the highly charitable appearances and the moral values we polished democracy in, this actually hides the core we had started from and that we enhanced in time. The hatred between fellows, the blind struggle for a facile and ephemeral power, and the lack of unity. People joining together under positive and beneficial ideas or concepts is quite dangerous, for this is the only way for the masses to become really powerful in their action. This basically is the reason why we often pursue the state splitting into different minorities, each of them having its own specific interests, culture, religious beliefs. Our final goal is having the cultural and religious traditions vanish away in different countries to the point where they lack the power of individualization. Then they may be easily controlled and assimilated in a unique governmental form, which will be obviously directed by our Masonic world elite. One of the major obstacles we encounter and we have to surpass is the various traditions of people and their need to stay close to them. We strive to gather a herd of animals automatically responsive. You give them hay and water at the proper time and they offer unconditional commitments. To attain this, just as I said before, the ancient traditions must wane. The real folk values and symbols must be evened out and even ignored. The new generation must be perverted at the soul and have their senses poisoned with false ideas, lies, and all kinds of alluring vices. We have mostly succeeded in doing so. That was quite easy for America, as they basically have no tradition at all. It is currently the place on earth where our plans have been perfectly carried out. The complete submission to the social economic system with total control and financial oppression. All these are wrapped by this, wrapped in the spell of extraordinary technologies and by the ridiculous and arrogant idea of the first world power. I think, just to take a break for a minute, I think we see, encoded in the new program, the completely unscientific response to COVID-19, social distancing, wearing masks. All of this is an attempt to prevent people from coming together, obviously, and the chance of bonds being formed, of people exchanging that energy and coming into kind of a spiritual understanding with one another, and to build maybe small coalitions that would grow, where people would be waking up and seeing through these methods. So it's interesting what he's saying here about the United States. We're seeing this change. We're seeing people waking up out of this. We're seeing a resurgence of, I think, a genuine an affirmation of spirituality, and then you're seeing an increasing, almost shocking and appalling anti-human response to that. And they're dueling it out, and this is why the rest of the world is watching the United States to see which way the world is going to go, because it's being played out there most explicitly, and the conflict is most stark. And I feel this, and the very few people that I'm close to can feel this as well. And I think there's a sense that the understanding among those few, the very few that I have still retained ties, or that I have recently created ties with, we understand the potential of these ties. Although there are very few of us, we sense, given what we know now about the new physics or neuropsychology, neuroscience, and frequency and vibration, we understand the potential that we have as free individuals, or those who understand, who live in a state of freedom, who cultivate a state of freedom. And therefore, I think it's no accident that somehow I found myself drawn to this figure of Saint Germain, who, as I said in a previous video, one of his nicknames is God of Freedom. So there is something there, and that the power of good is something that this control mechanism is fighting very hard to eradicate. And it won't succeed. Going on here, Signor Massini going on. People need the conviction, even of a false power. They unconsciously need something to give a vivid impression, an inner safety. We maintain this idea of power in the Americans' minds, for it prevents them from revolting against the system that had offered them such a comfortable idea of supremeness. Besides, we can make great use of the vanity and shallowness to derive from here. Since they are less cautious and can be easily manipulated, the Americans can stand for the peak offensive in our plan to conquer the absolute power on earth. Cesar wanted more details. Since it's just a bluff, why is democracy so much stressed about, he asked. And I know the English in this book is a little bit funny. It's translated from Romanian, and there's some issues with the translation that still need to be smoothed out, although this edition is quite good, and I'm extremely grateful that this book has been made available. My Romanian is coming along, but it's nowhere near the point where I could read this in the original. So anyway, going on, just as a side note, Signor Massini goes on, democracy, my dear, is just apparently a beneficial thing. It enables, in fact, the highest abuses and conflicts, answered Signore Massini. Don't you know people have died in the name of democracy? All laws and principles of the current civilization are structured according to the laws of democracy, aren't they? Well, The emergence of this pole, which is democracy, also determined the possibility of the opposite idea and of the fight against democracy. That's how we obtained the conflict. The conflict is a sound ground to enable the ruling of the whole world. Let me remind you here of the basic rule of our Masonic regulations. Give secret support to both sides by smart tactics in politics and economy, and give a shoulder to each combatant in order to reach the success you pursue. The term and the false concept of democracy became a shield for many governments in order to freely act as they wish and therefore cover their own interests. Most of the countries fell into huge debts, striving to cover the military expenses no matter that they are not involved in wars. We give them loans, but ask the governments to guarantee them with many assets, mines, forests, railways, or several industrial fields that are quite important. This is the main way for us to gradually take hold of a country's wealth and to control the people in that country. We're talking about asset stripping, with the conditionalities imposed by the IMF. We've all seen this. We've seen this carried out in Greece and carried out everywhere. With very few exceptions, it succeeds. And this is a tactic that's gone on forever. Certainly you see it with the time of the Venetian Republic. They just completely destroyed the economies all over Europe until the War of the League of Cambrai, 1530, I think. I have to go back and check. I still believe that democracy is a good idea, but the way it is applied seems perverted, said Cesar, being careful in his answer to the Venerable Mazzini. That is true indeed. Taken as a concept, democracy is only valuable when civilization has already reached a high level of understanding and application of the mysteries of the universe and of life. But even at such stages, it must only be employed in some restricted groups of individuals who are appointed to make the major decisions in some community or for a whole country. Democracy cannot essentially exist in a proper way for the large masses of people in heterogeneous structures. We do know that it means a viable concept only for the societies that have been given beneficial directions and where people think and generally act in the same voice and who have a high level of consciousness. But it's not at all the case for the modern civilization. What about the church? Cesar inferred. It has no influence in this respect. It has no influence in this respect? I know for a fact that the masses seriously confide in the church and follow it. Signor Mazzini failed to disguise his irritability. The Christian church is one of the most dangerous enemies we have. Its influence is quite large, but we endeavor to decrease it as much as possible. In doing so, we particularly target the young generation, which we try to get unbalanced by means of our ideas. We mainly strove to give people the ideas of freedom and democracy, which the modern civilization is known to misunderstand and give improper use. Everybody supports freedom and democracy and talks about it, but they barely think of the wars, conflicts, tensions, and misunderstandings more usual in the world than ever. And they never consider this in the light of the goodwill, charity, and peace that are stated worldwide. This is how we gave the supreme rank to the ruler's hypocrisy, and we take full advantage of this. We also counted on the lack of common sense, the vanity, the conceitedness of most people who imagine that they very well understand the structure of democracy and freedom of expression. When given such a frame, average people get self-important and they enhance this feeling at quite a ridiculous scale. In their petty existence, under their everyday worries, people even imagine that the political leaders rely on them and their opinion. Politicians therefore give people the impression that their opinion is a competent one. In fact, they only pursue a strong influence upon voters who must be urged not to their own necessities, but to the interest of the leaders, usually concealed under promises and delusional platforms in politics. This is how we are protected by the very ones we want to oppress. In case any resistant position may rise against the general background, the representative must be eliminated right away. We generally proceed to disparagement by means of media. We continue by satire, which helps us stir people's suspicions and distrust as soon as concerns about that person's behavior and statements. And this is certainly what they tried to do with Trump desperately, right? You can hear the echoes coming from 2003. We can recognize these things today. Eventually, nobody will give credit to such a person. Since we display concentric and persevering assaults, often spiced with blackmail, the subjects will soon feel forlorn and accused for what he dared to write or say. He will be threatened, job blackmailed, and discriminated in society so that he will eventually give in. He will go back on the courage he evinced at the beginning, for he now wants to get back his advantages. Sometimes he will even become our partner. This is the main drama we created in society. Most of the people are weak and cowardly, and there are rather few to resist our attacks and strategies. However, such people obstruct our actions, and worse, they gain public consideration and help. This means unity and force in common goals, which is just what we are trying to block. Even worse is that some of these people and groups observe very well-known esoteric techniques which they apply in order to counter our actions. Well, it's true that our elders, the Illuminati, also make use of secret techniques of persuasion and influence in order to determine specific effects in the physical world. We sometimes are embarrassed and even obstructed in carrying out our plans by the opposite forces. And this is why we absolutely need to attract people like you, who have already attained remarkable powers. We are willing to offer so much instead. This is the only way you can live your life for real. Talking about the attacks against the Masonic organization, don't they bring to light its plans and intentions? Said Cesar, trying to avoid a clear answer. Some people who strongly oppose our plans do know the truth about us. Since the ordinary techniques of annihilation are not that efficient in such cases, we arrange an artifice. We choose some venerable members, particularly among those in the second rank, and have them present to the audience by means of our controlled media some aspects concerning our organization. They have interviews and write books or articles where some real and inoffensive aspects of our structure and activities are depicted. The principle we follow in proportion is a quarter reality and 3/4 fake. The large amount of data that is given to the audience contains some real information, which we cannot deny anyway, but it is exposed by the members of our organization. How could anyone suspect us of concealing information since we freely offer it? Obviously, those true things are wrapped and adorned in lies so that people shouldn't get much of it and therefore quit investigating the topic. And, you can see this on YouTube where, Freemasons speak out, 99th degree Mason speaks out. I mean, come on. You'd be very wise to be these sources are highly dubious. You'd be a bit foolish to believe them. Any slick presentation on YouTube that purports to let you in on the secrets of high Freemasonry, I would be very suspicious of these sources. I think that's exactly what he's talking about here. we are the ones to draw advantage out of this, for our enemies can no longer present the truth that we have already stated in a perverted form. Even if they try to deal with other fields of our activity, we'll pose as innocent oppressed victims, and will also enjoy the support of some mature, influential people. We currently started to tackle this strategy as it's high time we came out of the shade we had deliberately chosen for ages. Due to the keener conflict, and I'm wondering, just right here, when I read this initially, was, there's so much talk about Illuminati in Hollywood and people flashing these signs, these ridiculous celebrities implying through their gestures and hand signs and statements that, they front for this Illuminati organization. But it's a kind of induction. It's kind of induction for mass hypnosis. It isn't really revealing any truth. These are kind of inert form of mimesis. Or rather, what's the guy? Oh my God, I can't remember. Mesmer. Thank you. Mesmerism. My God, Anton Mesmer is the father of hypnosis, or at least he introduced it to psychology. And when we look at these Illuminati hand signs and symbols and statements made coming from Hollywood, what strikes me is that they seem very dead. In fact, they're anti-life. In fact, they don't reveal anything. They're not gateways to higher levels of existence, of functioning. They don't teach us. They're not pro-human. It's very ugly. It's very ugly, actually. And let's see. Due to the keener conflict, I think he's saying, things are ratcheting up in the last 20 years. Staying too much in the shade would now make much more trouble than advantage. This is why in the last 20 years or so, we slightly started to come out on the stage, stating bits of truth together with many other lies. We very well knew that repeating a lie would make a truth out of it in the long run, which causes people to lose vigilance. Nevertheless, the fight is getting even closer now, for the public reaction also became unexpected. We must give the impression we are helping people and that we support them in need and pain. Our main directions, particularly sustained by our politicians, feign a major interest for people's current problems, mainly produced by the world economic recession managed by our organization. Therefore, using our daily workers that I just told you about, helped by their acolytes, we attempt to give the idea that we take deep interest in these aspects and we strive to improve them. In fact, this entire show in the footlights is only meant to win credit from the masses, so that at the right moment and in the right perfect conjuncture, we should take possession of the political and economical leadership in the whole world and form up a unique world government under our complete and total order. So, New World Order, obviously. We must therefore get people's confidence as much as possible in order to give the impression of a natural sequence of facts, namely the terrible world crisis to come, and so we'll erect ourselves as redeemers of humankind, for we do own the financial resources to do this. Basically, the task is not that difficult, since the masses' vigilance is already weakened by other strategies that we've been successfully applying for a while. Everyday work routine, TV programs structured so as to inoculate a passive attitude in people's subconscious with a lack of reaction and discrimination. Chemical food, drugs, all kinds of diseases. And of course, that would include vaccines. Since 1986, the list of chronic diseases, the average person, it's just more than doubled. It's off the charts since 1986. Since they ramped up the vaccine schedule and gave total immunity from liability to the vaccine companies to just continue injuring and damaging and killing people at minimal cost to themselves, at no risk. So they're obviously behind this too. It's full spectrum dominance, right? As he said that, Signore Mazzini suddenly had a glance at the elegant watch on his wrist embedded in diamonds. The evening had already fallen, and it was chilly. "I think it's high time that we stopped," the Venerable One said. "We count on your extraordinary adaptability, and I personally consider I have made myself quite clear to you as concerns the basic aspects of our activities. Tonight, I leave for Amsterdam as I have to deal with some problems there. I will also tell my honorable fellows the impression you made." Signore Mazzini stared for a few moments at Cesar in a willing attitude. "I appreciate the result of our appointment as positive, and I'm expecting proper support from you in this respect. You are supposed to know most of the truth about our Masonic organization in order to avoid any possible blocking of conception. I will be back to visit you soon, and that is going to be an important moment. That will be a difficult test for you, I may say. By that time, we're going to fix everything up in order to get you in our organization." The Venerable Mazzini had already risen to his feet, leaning on his cane. Cesar saw him out to the copter. His strategy was apparently bearing fruits, as he had no difficulty persuading Cesar that he didn't get stuck in any obligations either. Fact is, Signore Mazzini had been so, I think he's supposed to be, Cesar had no difficulty persuading Mazzini that he didn't get stuck. Oh, no. Okay, I get it. Signore Mazzini had been so self-collected in tackling the subject and eager to give explanations that Cesar's acceptance was basically taken for granted. So without fully committing and without rejecting the offer either, he manages to stay in a position where he can learn more. And the next meeting will get into the higher metaphysical level involved. And at that point, it should be clear to people why the figure of Saint-Germain should occupy our thoughts and our deeper considerations of what he represents and what he evinces in us and what he challenges us perhaps to achieve in ourselves. The Venerable One had an amazing subtle force, but for the remarkable psychic balance and perfect control of his mind energy. Cesar wouldn't have succeeded to face the incredible active influence that the Mason could demonstrate when he wanted to get through something. Cesar said, and this is Cesar talking to the writer, Radu Cinamar, the writer. Cesar, the hero, Cesar Brad, is now telling the writer, summarizing the dynamic here. Cesar said that in such situations, the psychic frequency of the Venerable Mason was so strong and dominating that it would have doubtlessly made a serious hypnotic effect upon a common person unable to control the superior levels of their mind. He had himself perceived in his aura the tough impact of that shroud of energy, deeply negative, but he had simultaneously lifted it up in a superior form of energy at the upper levels of his mind. His steady volition enabled a perfect control and helped him be fully aware in confronting Signore Mazzini. Perhaps the reader will have a small understanding of their encounter. Then it goes forward from there. Now that I know the entire background, I can state that even to Cesar, it was a real surprise to find out the real grounds of the discussion and the shrewdness behind it. However, the events to come were bound to give an advantage to Cesar thanks to his extraordinary ability to creep on a knife's edge when it came to dramatic and tense conditions where highly important state decisions were required. I think these are qualities, very valuable capabilities that all of us can develop, probably through, mental exercise, but through meditation, we can allow ourselves to amplify capabilities that we have that are latent. We can develop ourselves. In fact, it's boundless what we do with what's inside of us. So I will stop there.